I'd like to introduce the Bryant Idea Program Director and Professor of Psychology, Dr. Allison Butler. Professor Butler is a prolific scholar whose work focuses on learning and cognition in K-12 populations, environmental influences on children, higher education pedagogy, and design thinking in schools. Her expertise has driven the development of the Bryant Idea. After serving as a faculty member in its initial year, a faculty mentor, in its initial year, Dr. Butler joined the nationally recognized Idea Planning Program Committee and has been the director for the past 3 years. Professor Butler's infectious enthusiasm and dedication to higher education are in part what makes the Bryant Idea so successful. Through her tireless work, first-year students within the program start to develop essential characteristics such as curiosity, critical thinking, creativity, and collaboration right from the start of their college career. Here to tell you more about this innovative program is Bryant's very own Dr. Allison Butler.
Wow, thank you for that amazing introduction. Woo! My kids don't say those things about me, but thank you very much, Michelle. I appreciate it. I am going to just dive right in. Thank you for staying, to our first year parents or other parents of students who are in the IDEA program this year. I'm just going to jump right in and screen share some slides with you here. So we'll get that going. Oops. All right. So thank you again for that introduction. IDEA stands for the acronym Innovation and Design Experience for All. It will run this year from January 26th through January 29th. And we have some of our little hashtags this year, the year on Zoom, and also our global Bryant Idea for the first time ever, which I'll tell you a little bit more about. So what is the Bryant Idea program? It's an experience, it's a course, it's a program, it's all of these things rolled into one. It's an experiential learning opportunity where students will apply something called the design thinking process, which some of you may be familiar with, and I'll tell you a little bit more about. They will apply that process to current real-world problems. And this year, those problems are centered around the disruption caused by the pandemic. So we have about 800 students innovating in the Bryant Idea program this year. And so that includes mostly first-year students, but also some sophomores or juniors who may have needed to defer the experience at some point. So we organize our students into classes, which we call cohorts. So that group of 800 is in classes or cohorts of 20 students each. So we have 40 cohorts of 20 students. This provides a really high touch environment. So it's a very small class format, again, 20 students. Within that, they're divided up into teams. So almost the entire experience is a team-based experience. So they'll be working on a team of 4 or 5 students. And they will actually have not just one faculty member working with them, but we're very proud of sort of the structure of a mentor team that works with them. So they will have a faculty member, a staff member, and 1 or 2 senior or junior student leaders on campus who will be working with them in this experience. And our student leaders apply for this process, and it becomes a really meaningful leadership opportunity for them. So they get excited to do this their first year when they experience the program, and then many of them get a second pass at it as a student leader later on. It is a graded course, so it shows up on their transcript as Bryant Idea 101, and it does go into their GPA, and it is a graded course. We proudly say it's a signature aspect of the curriculum, so this is our 9th year doing Bryant Idea, my 4th year as the director, and our first year doing it exclusively over Zoom. And as I'm excited to share with you, whenever there's a disruption, you know, our whole program centers around disruptive innovation. And so we had a fantastic opportunity that we didn't see coming, where we would get internally very disrupted as a program. And I'm excited to share with you this afternoon some of the new innovative aspects of our program that we probably never would have done if we weren't forced to go into a remote format. And so I think that you'll see there's some real value add for the students who are going through the program this year. Again, 4 days and 3 nights. Our big opening day is Tuesday, January 26th at 9 a.m. So why do we do Bryant Idea? So what are some of the outcomes or the reasons? So one of the first goals of the program is to teach our students this specific model of innovative problem solving called the design thinking process. IDEO is very well-known, internationally recognized design firm that has done an excellent job sharing many different tools and resources for this methodology. And so here's a great quote from David Kelly from IDEO, who shares with us, design thinking is a process for creative problem solving. It utilizes elements from the designer's toolkit like empathy and experimentation to arrive at innovative solutions. What we love about this methodology at Bryant is that it really truly lies at the intersection of the arts, sciences, and business. It does not firmly sit in one college or another, but it really pulls together our students in a very integrative, interdisciplinary experience. And as they see in the program, this method of reasoning and thinking and teamwork can apply to any domain that they may be working on. So they take these skills with them in the future. Just to orient you, if you aren't familiar with the approach, these are just a few examples of some organizations that are pretty well known for embracing design thinking and using these methodologies. Ford is another one. Oh, it's on there. Disney, certainly. I will also pull out that we have CVS Health, EY, Amica, and Citizens Bank on this graphic, and they are the 4 corporate partners that we have for this experience. So it means a lot to us that we have these great organizations who want to align with the Bryant IDEA program. I'll tell you a little bit more about how they engage, and what that does is really affirm for our students that what they're learning is not just an academic exercise, but it's actually a very cutting edge, forward-thinking methodology that's real, that's used in industries all around the world in many different segments. All right, so the process that we will take them through a series of workshops and then experiential digital activities is this 5-phase model. And we begin with empathy. And so the idea is this is a design experience, a problem-solving experience, but the first step is for them to build empathy for the people who will use their product, service, or experience. So whenever we're designing something, we need to design with that end user in mind. And so we start with a process of them doing some field research, which they will still do in this remote format, and they will get to understand the group they're solving for. They will craft insights. So if any of you work, in the area of consumer insights or things like that, that's the kind of work they're doing. We teach them how to brainstorm solutions, how to make prototypes. And this year they'll be making digital storyboards, which is really cool. And then they test their solutions. So one of the big takeaways from this methodology is right here in the first year, we're training our students to not embrace a one and done, plan and execute once type of methodology. Instead, we're really getting them in the habit and in the mindset of your final product will be better when you test, when you get feedback, when you take and apply feedback and arrive at a better product in the end when you do that. So some other things besides design thinking, I think you'll see your children, your students will start to develop skills that are useful in many different contexts through Bryant IDEA. So in addition to design thinking, they're practicing collaboration. They make verbal and visual presentations that have to be very tightly timed and concise and clear. They're learning that brainstorming. They're learning how to build empathy for others. And we actually also take them through some activities around team communication and observational field research. But beyond, so that's the kind of the main large academic goal. And beyond that, we have seen through the years the value that this mentorship relationship brings. The fact that we have these small groups of students who are working with faculty, staff, and these peer mentors in this non-traditional learning environment, right? So it doesn't feel like a traditional class. And so it's very high touch and personalized, and they really get to know staff members and professors that then they form relationships with them that they can carry through the rest of their time at Bryant. Obviously, we want to get them embracing innovation generally and to give them experience solving real world problems. We also find the experience truly sets them up for success when it comes to landing internships, jobs, performing well in upper level courses, and again, their experiences after Bryant. One of my greatest joys is hearing back from so many of our alumni who write and say, oh, I'd love to be a judge in Bryant IDEA, or do you need a speaker? Because I would love to come back and tell you how that experience, when I was 19 at Bryant really, ignited a passion for me, or it really was the main talking point in my interview that got me that great internship or job. So we have many, many stories like that, and probably over the next coming months, we'll be highlighting some of those so you can see them. And because of the number of stakeholders in the Bryant community who are engaged in IDEA, we have this other wonderful outcome, which is just general community building. So we have these 800 students, we have about 150 faculty and staff, we have another 50 upperclassmen who are engaged, and nearly 200 alumni who all come together for these 4 days to do Bryant IDEA. So what are some things that are new? So absolutely, the last 8 years, this was not a remote program. So what's new in 2021? It's a remote program. And I don't like to think of that as an apology or, oh, it's sorry, it has to be remote, because I really do think that what we've been able to do in this format has actually added some really new elements that I think we will keep moving forward. So what are some of those highlights to share them with you? Well, we'll be using a remote synchronous format. And what that means is this is not a self-paced online class. We are meeting live with our students. And so they will meet in Zoom rooms as a cohort. There will be some webinars. There's 1 or 2 self-paced activities just to give them that break off the screen and give them time to have some breaks and time to carve out their own schedule. But generally speaking, it's remote, but as a shared experience. Our theme this year is Elevate Empathy, and I'll talk more about that in a moment and why that's our theme. The design challenges this year all center around the impact of the pandemic on different groups of people. And our students had an opportunity to rank their project preferences at an orientation in the fall. So assuming they attended an orientation, which most of them did, that meant that they got to rank their top 6 project preferences, and we were able to give everyone one of their top preferences. So everyone's working on something that's meaningful to them. Small cohorts, as I mentioned. For the first time, by going remote, we're going global. So we will have students in India, in China, and the Dominican Republic, on the West Coast of the United States, on the East Coast, all over, who are engaging in Bryant IDEA, which is really enriching the field research component of the course. For the first time, we are teaching and using digital innovation tools, which we expect that students will now be able to use in other coursework and in other experiences that happen after IDEA. So one of them is part of the Google suite. It's called Jamboard, and that gives our students an opportunity to basically have a shared whiteboard or canvas. Normally, we would have our students, taking white chart paper and using Post-its and sticking them up on the walls. And this year, that will all happen through this Jamboard program. It's free with Google. We've trained the students. We've given them information about how to practice using Jamboard so they're ready to use it when the program starts. But it all works with digital Post-its and markers and things like this. We're also, we purchased a license for a program called Storyboard, which is a really neat digital storyboard platform. So they will basically, their prototype, or the way they will share their solution at the end, is they will make essentially a comic strip or a storyboard. If you're familiar with Pixar, a lot of industries use these as a way to share in a story format what the new user experience looks like after they've come up with their concept or their solution. So that's, again, they're getting an opportunity to learn tools that no other previous year of IDEA has ever endorsed. And so hopefully some transferable skills for them. They'll conduct this authentic field research. And when we go over the schedule, I'll say a bit more about what that looks like. They will be judged. It's always a competition every year. The way we're structuring it this year is that there will be 1 winning team out of 4. So there will be a top team in each of those cohorts. And the judges are all sorts of executives and directors of nonprofit organizations, some folks internal to Bryant, but we put together a really excellent group of alumni and other folks who come in to the Zoom room, and the students will give a final pitch to them, giving them those presentation skill experiences, and then they will get scored on how innovative their solution is, on how well they articulated their use of the design thinking process, and then the presentation quality. We also have some top-notch keynotes this year and a really great panel discussion that I'd like to mention to you. So I am a Disney fanatic. Anyone who knows me knows that I am really another level when it comes to my love for Disney and all things Disney. And I couldn't be more excited to announce that our innovation keynote is Duncan Wardle. He spent 25 years at Walt Disney Company. 7 of those years as the head of innovation and creativity at Disney. And he was deeply involved in the launch of the Disney Magic Band that people wear around their wrists. And even when Toy Story Land opened up, he sent Buzz Lightyear into space through a partnership with NASA and did some really cool big ideas. So he will be doing a 90-minute keynote. And I'm excited to mention to you that you are all invited to attend this keynote. So we will be sharing the links on the events.bryant.edu calendar, and we encourage you to pop in and hear what Duncan has to say. So he's in the program because he gives our students an opportunity to see how design thinking has been used at Disney in order to create really memorable and positive user experiences. Our second keynote speaker will be Shola Kay, and she'll be joining us from London. And Shola Kay is a award-winning speaker, a communication consultant, international performer, author, TEDx speaker. She's been featured in the BBC and Harper's Bazaar and other venues. And she's going to be talking to us about the importance of empathy, and not just empathy for design reasons, but how can becoming a more empathetic leader and community member help you be more successful in general when it comes to community building, embracing diversity, connecting with your teammates. And so our students will actually do something called a 30-day empathy plan, which is almost like you heard of a 30-day empathy, a diet, like a 30-day fix or something. So this is a 30-day empathy fix that we will launch in the IDEA program when Shola speaks to our students. All right, so a little bit more then about how that theme is going to thread into the types of challenges that our students will be working on. So all of the groups in IDEA, all of the students will be thinking about this umbrella question of how might we elevate empathy, social connection, and or community in a COVID world. So the program provides an opportunity for students in their teams to apply this design thinking process to improve the experience of a particular user group who needs their help. And so as I mentioned earlier, we divided these groups of people into groups that our team brainstormed were really deeply being impacted by the pandemic. So here's some of the examples. I encourage you to ask your student what their project is. So at this point, they know what cohort number they're in, they know their mentors, they know their faculty member, etc., and they know their project. And if they don't know it, you can remind them that they can go onto the IDEA 2021 Blackboard site and find everything that they need there, or they can email me if they're not sure what their project is. So some examples, we have groups of students who are focused on frontline doctors and nurses. And so the question they'll be solving is how might we support the health and well-being of frontline COVID doctors and nurses experiencing high levels of stress and social isolation during the pandemic. We also have questions pertaining to the disruption in collegiate athletes' experiences, especially last spring. We have questions about our preschool students and our youngest learners who are, needing to learn on Zoom when it's not developmentally, the best way for them to, develop socially and emotionally. We have questions around remote corporate employees and that experience, and how do you cultivate a strong team climate and cohesive culture when all of your employees are working remote. We have some about performing artists and musicians who've been disruption in the restaurant and bar industry. And again, if you're interested in seeing the full list, you can have your student show that to you on the Blackboard site. It says design challenges and how might we question. So every student is in a group where they're focusing on one particular question here. All right, so just to let you know, what do the students already know about IDEA? All right, so in the fall, for any students who were on campus, we held an IDEA orientation. Actually, the orientation was over Zoom, but then we provided an opportunity to come pick up some materials in November in the MAC. And so here's a couple of photographs from that. So the students came and they picked up a t-shirt, they picked up a folder with some academic materials, they picked up a bag. And believe it or not, we had about 120 IDEA care packages that went out all around the world for anyone who was not able to pick up these packages. And we've tracked most of those packages. The delivery success rate has been very good, but I want to mention to you that if you have a student who has lost their bag or lost their folder or didn't receive the mailing, then we're providing electronic copies of all of those materials on the IDEA 2021 Blackboard course site. And it's actually, there's a tab on there labeled electronic copies of the materials that were in your folder. So something very, very clear there. So the other thing, like I said, they should know their cohort number. The way they can find their cohort number is if they go on Banner in their spring registration, it will list Bryant 101 and then a two-digit number. So if it said Bryant 101-16, that would mean that they're cohort number 16. And they know their mentors. Another thing I'd love to underscore in the event that you may be able to help me with this is that all students should be completing some IDEA pre-work currently. They've been emailed about this. We did a video that we posted on the Blackboard site to explain these things to them. But in order for us to be able to start and really take off with a bang on Tuesday, we want to get them ready now in terms of their workspace, in terms of knowing how to use Jamboard, knowing how to use Storyboard, that setting Zoom up properly so that everything works. And so the three areas that we've asked students to be working on starting last week and into this week is we have some tech trainings that they need to do, and they're very short. It's basically a training of how to use Jamboard and then suggesting that they practice with it, a training on how to enter Zoom the correct way so that it all functions properly and that they're using the most updated version, because we use a lot of advanced features of Zoom. And if they haven't updated Zoom, in 7 months or something, then their user experience won't be where it needs to be. We also have our faculty have reached out to all of the students and asked them to do an introduction post. And an introduction post, it may be a video, it could be a discussion board or a Flipgrid, different formats where we're asking the students by Sunday to introduce themselves to their fellow cohort members. And then lastly, the other thing we've asked them to do is to start thinking about people that they could interview that connect to the design challenge that they're working on. So for example, one of our projects was isolated patients and seniors. So that question is, how might we combat loneliness and feelings of isolation for any hospitalized patients or seniors in nursing homes who are not allowed visitors during COVID? So if you were in that project, the task would be, who could you identify that you might personally, as an individual student, be able to interview during IDEA? And we have times on the schedule where they conduct those interviews. And so any help that you may be able to provide them, again, by asking them, oh, what's the question that you're solving? And let's brainstorm together about who in our personal network, our family, friends, coworkers, might we be able to reach out to? There's, projects on EMT, police, fire, small business owners, nonprofits, et cetera. And so we've asked the students to start thinking now and identify. We're asking each student to conduct 2 Zoom interviews on their own time. And so we don't want them to just start thinking about this on the first day of IDEA. We even gave them a letter that we put on the Blackboard site that they could use to explain to this person what IDEA is all about and kind of what the ask is. So we gave them a little template letter they could use if they want to do that. And I'm happy to take any questions at the end to clarify anything about that pre-work. What's in the bag? So what should your students have? You might see these things around your house. If you do, dust them off, put them right on the kitchen table. So they'll be ready to go for next week on Tuesday morning. So they've got a Bryant IDEA mask, which they don't actually need for our Zoom purposes, but they can wear that proudly in between and when they're back on campus. They've got a folder that has some print materials. If you have a student that does not have this folder and does not have these print materials, I strongly encourage them to go to the Blackboard site and print them off in advance so that they do have those hard copies. I think that will be important for them. The t-shirts, they will wear those during the judging. They have Post-its and Sharpies and other little tools like this that they will need during the program. So we've also set some expectations for remote engagement with the students. So there will be plenty of breaks. I will share the schedule with you at the end. But we've told our students to start thinking now about a good workspace where they can focus and have privacy, to check their internet connection as best they can and make sure that's functioning well. I want to mention that Laptop Central is fully available to students. They're even working extended hours. So while IDEA is in session, Laptop Central is available to our students. And so if they're having an internet issue or they can't get their Zoom video to work or anything like this, the Laptop Central is available to provide support throughout IDEA for them. We are going to set the expectation that video should be on at all times. if they're concerned at all about what they have going on in the background, they have these Zoom virtual backgrounds. You can see I'm using one of them right now, so they're welcome to do that. We ask that they are prepared to have their audio on, so in the moment they're ready to answer questions and join discussions, that they have those idea materials nearby. And while you can use Zoom from a cell phone, we strongly recommend that they are using their fully functioning Bryant laptop or computer, and they're not, joining the class while riding in a car. And we've tried to say to them, this is a full 1 credit class. It's going to be not the right time for you to be babysitting or trying to fit in other types of responsibilities. It's a pretty intense schedule. And the way we've explained that to students is, if you think of how many hours comprise a 3 credit hour class, right? This is a 1 credit fully, moving into your GPA and all of these things. We're trying to get 1 credit hour in really just 3.5 days. And so it's really important that they are committed and available and attending all of those sessions. So I would love to invite you to follow us on our social media accounts. We'll be running all sorts of competitions for students, and we'll be announcing all of our different panelists and keynotes. So please follow us at Bryant Idea on Instagram and Twitter. I want to mention that to you. I also thought it might be nice to share, but right before I do the schedule here, one of our long-term sponsors has been CVS Health, and they've returned every year. And I thought this quote was important. So Matt shares with us, as an advocate and practitioner of human-centered design at CVS Health, it was inspiring to see hundreds of undergrads embracing the mindset and the methodology. It's a powerful tool that allows individuals and organizations to take on some of the most pressing challenges to help future-proof our businesses. These students will have a leg up. And I think it really does say a lot when our alumni come back, when these organizations align with us, because they're sort of affirming for us that what we're doing here at Bryant is preparing the next generation to go into the workforce. And in some of my other work that I do, I will run trainings for some of these different corporate teams and different government groups and whatnot. And they're always really impressed that freshmen at Bryant are learning these methods, because they're investing in training, executives and folks on their teams who are, much more senior, and how wonderful that Bryant students already come into the workforce knowing some of these skills. So now I'm going to share with you the schedule. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing the slides and share the schedule. And I want to mention to you that this schedule document that I'm sharing came to you in an email this morning that Elizabeth O'Neill sent out. And so you can look for that schedule, and it will also, it's linked there, and this will be available to you. So you should have your own copy of this, and your student has this as well on the Blackboard site. So it looks fairly complicated, and I'm happy to answer any questions about it, but it's color-coded because we have green is indicating to our students, those are the moments that you are in a cohort room, a cohort meeting in Zoom for that group of 20 that's all solving that design challenge about, frontline doctors and nurses. So the green is when you're with that mentor team having a workshop experience. Blue means we're doing a large webinar. So when we have Duncan Wardle or Shola K or our sponsor panel discussion and our opening and our closing, there are 5 webinars. And these are the events that you're invited to join us at. And so those are blue on the schedule. There's a few times on the schedule where you see purple. And purple is when students will be working independently on some type of deliverable. Red is a break. And orange is when there's some entertainment options for students. So we have some really cool things. If you've heard of Airbnb experiences, we have opportunities for your students to sign up to go on a leopard safari. There's a trip to New Zealand. There's our idea team has done some really creative things to get students some experiential fun. There's bingo, there's trivia, there's a big Zoom party, pop culture celebration with DJ Valentina, who's a great partner for us every year. So there's a lot of fun. There'll be contests, competitions, opportunity for prizes and raffles that go all throughout the experience as well. So that's on orange. We're actually also doing some video game competitions. We have a Rocket League tournament, if you know your student likes that. We have the first one this Sunday that they've been told about as well. Okay, so we begin on Tuesday the 26th. We're asking everyone to be in the webinar 10 minutes early, and then it will launch at 9. And this one is really directed to the students, so I probably won't bother to share the link with this, but for you, but you're welcome to look over the shoulder of anyone who may be in your home. This will be the kickoff. And then they go in and meet their cohort and get to know each other, do some icebreakers and things like this. At 10:30 that first day, they run the wallet challenge, which it will take them through the full design cycle through a hands-on activity. They go into a break then. So from noon to 2, they're on a break on the first day. And during that break, they just need to find 45 minutes where they will go on to Blackboard and watch a video case that is a great 13-minute short, concise video from GE Healthcare. And it's called the Adventure Series. And it's a really neat example of how GE Healthcare reimagined the experience of children getting MRIs. And they themed the MRI experience to make it feel more like a theme park in order to address the anxiety and fear that children would have going into that experience. So we have our students watch that case to give another real world example of how it all works. In the afternoon here, all of this kind of green that you're seeing in the afternoon on the first day is when they're learning how to conduct field research. So they're learning how to interview, they're learning how to conduct observations. They're learning terminology like pain points and workarounds and extreme users and the words that design thinkers and innovators use. And then they start to do the field research. We're very excited about this. And the way this is going to work, I'm talking now about this 4:15 to 5:30 set. For each of these projects, we have pulled together about 5 or 6 users or stakeholders who connect. So for example, on frontline doctors and nurses, we have a group of frontline doctors and nurses who will come in and speak to the class, and the class will have an opportunity to ask them questions to learn about their experience in the pandemic. We have, again, bar owners, restaurant owners, servers who are going into that cohort, people who were hospitalized or who had babies in the NICU during the pandemic. They'll be going into that project. Our small business owners will go into another project. This is a really robust group of alumni, friends and family of our broad networks who are really excited to come in and have that engagement with our students. And then here you see 5:30 to 8:30 is the first independent field research. And so I mentioned earlier that we've asked students to start identifying on their own friends and family members that connect to their design challenge that they could interview on their own. And so we've given them this evening block. So anytime after 5:30 on the first day is when they individually on their own time would conduct an interview. And then we'll have some of that optional entertainment going on, and that's completely optional. So they'll get a good night's sleep. They'll come back the next day. The morning, I will pull out just a couple of things about the morning. This is when we have our first keynote, which is Shola Kay coming to us from London, talking about empathy and launching that 30-day empathy fix. After the talk, they will go into a workshop where they'll apply some of the tools that she talked about. Then we have our second block right here, our second block where they're conducting their own interviews on their own time. So they're off of the screen from 11:30 to 2:30. They're not on Zoom, but they're still contributing to their field research by trying to conduct an interview or an observation during this time. We're doing a really cool team building workshop with them, a simulation. So one of our other goals of this idea experience is to not just assume that they know how to work in teams, but to actually give them an experience that we can debrief that teaches them some really valuable lessons about team communication and getting the dynamics right on your team, so that when they're working through this project and then in future courses, we do a lot of teamwork in Bryant courses, they will have some transferable skills for those experiences. So then those of you maybe in some of the fields that you work in may use journey mapping. So you can see we have some sponsor engagement here, EY, Amica. Amica is kind of planning these maps for us where they'll get to chart out the user experience. So they have all these workshops that are happening. And again, there's a 90-minute break in there. So each day is carved out with this very dynamic change between a passive webinar where they're watching, hopefully a very inspirational talk, or a much more engaging small group workshop that's happening in their cohort level Zoom room, or they're off the screen to get that break, to get some food and to do something independent. or they're after a break coming back on and doing something fun and entertaining with their classmates like bingo or trivia. The third day, we're continuing taking them through the design thinking process, crafting insights, doing brainstorming. We're going to be using that Jamboard. Then they've got another break there. It brings us to the afternoon of Thursday, where we have Duncan from Disney giving his 90-minute keynote. Again, the second event here that you're invited to, that we'll share the link with you for. And then in this evening, we start moving into making their digital storyboards, which they will use Storyboard that for. And another really cool session that I'll highlight here that's a great tradition in IDEA is the night before the final presentations, we bring alumni in to work with each group of students. And the alumni give the students feedback and help coach them up and give them suggestions about how to iterate their project or how to change it in some way. And that's a really powerful experience. It gives the alumni an opportunity to connect with the students. The students get to make a great connection with an alumni, and they have that shared experience. And often the alumni are talking about how they've used the design thinking skills in their work environments. So when we get to the final day, this day ends at 3, so they have plenty of time over the weekend and whatnot to kind of shift gears to get ready for the remote start of spring. And before the judging, so the judging happens in the afternoon, but right here I want to highlight this one. So 10:30 to 11:30, you're also going to be invited to this session. A representative from each of those 4 sponsor organizations, so EY, Amica, Citizens, and CVS Health. Each of them has an executive who will be on the panel. Our president, who was with you at the beginning of this meeting, Ross Cattell, will be the moderator of this panel. And the topic is elevating empathy and innovation during the pandemic. We have some great speakers. I'll mention we have the Chief Marketing Officer of CVS Health, Norm DeGrave, will be on the panel, among other folks. And they'll be talking about, one, what does it mean for them to lead with empathy during a time of crisis? They'll also be sharing examples of how in their professional work, they have innovated during the pandemic to help people and how they've used the principles of design thinking to make that happen. For example, with CVS doing, the pop-up testing or shifting MinuteClinic to telehealth and their role in vaccine distribution, they have a lot of examples of how that has happened. With Amica, for example, they're going to be talking more about how they had to move their employee base to a remote environment and how they tested that out and iterated that. So I think that's going to be a really neat event and sort of a bookend for their experience, again, grounding their 4 days in the real world and what it looks like when some of these leading organizations have responded to the pandemic by using the methods they've been learning all week. So we end with the final pitching, which happens from 1 to 2, and then we have a closing ceremony, which you're also invited to, where we will announce the winners. So that was a lot of information, but I'm officially out of things to share, and really happy to answer any questions that might have come in.
Thank you very much, Professor Butler. My name is Liz O'Neill. I'm Bryant's Associate Vice President for University Relations, and it looks like we have one question that just came in, and it is, for the IDEA interviews, can they interview more than 2 individuals?
Great question. Absolutely. So 2 is the minimum standard, and more is more. Yeah, more is better, and that's great. Yeah, any help you can provide them with that is really tremendous, and a nice way for parents to engage in this experience as well.
Okay, we have another question that is specific to a student athlete. So the IDEA program schedule does not allow much time to prepare for a long drive and the 72-hour COVID testing. And so I don't know if you have an answer for that, or if that will wind up being more for the testing team.
That may be more for the testing team, because unfortunately, I'm not as informed about that piece of it. I do know we have one example with athletes where they're excused from one portion of the program for a short time, but that's about all that I can chime in on that one. Maybe Inga.
Liz, I'm sorry, I only caught half of it. Sorry.
That's okay. Thank you
That
very
was a
much,
great
Inga.
presentation, Allison. Thank you.
Thanks, Inga.
The question, Inga, is for an athlete trying to return to campus on Saturday, January 30th. They don't have a lot of time to juggle their 72-hour testing with the onset of the IDEA program.
Athletes were asked a month and a half ago to get a pre-test before coming to campus. If they can't do it, then they should let their coach know, and we'll figure something out. Thanks.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
maybe one other layer I'll just add there is if you look closely at the schedule, there are some times where there's like a 3-hour break. So there's a few that's just 15 minutes or take an hour for lunch, but there are some big blocks of breaks. And so that should hopefully open up some flexibility for the testing.
Or they could test, near their home, which, I would probably recommend in that case.
We have a number of parents who are not finding the schedule. And so there are a number of different ways that you can access the schedule that Professor Butler just reviewed. If you did this morning receive an email with the link to this Zoom webinar, the schedules were linked through from that email, so you can find them there. We will also be placing them online. We are resuming the weekly publication of our Bryant Strong Reopening newsletter this Friday. And so in that newsletter, you will have a link to the video recording from today, highlights on IDEA, and links to these documents, links which a number of parents have asked about, links directly through to the academic calendar for the spring semester. And that includes the dates for IDEA as well as the spring break days that are being scheduled in lieu of a full spring break week. So you'll find a pretty easy recap of everything in that Friday reopening newsletter. But also you can look on the events.bryant.edu calendar, which you can get through from the bryant.edu homepage. And all of the events for IDEA that are open to parents and families, including the keynote presentations, those are highlighted in the calendar. And as soon as we have the Zoom links for the individual presentations, we'll be populating them into the calendar there as well.
Yeah, and I can't remember if you mentioned this one, Liz, but all of the students have a Blackboard site like they would for any other course. They have an IDEA 2021 Blackboard site, and the schedule is right on the main menu of that, so you could ask them.
We have one question, Allison, that I know doesn't have a one-size-fits-all answer. For the keynote speakers, I know that some of them we will be able to capture by video and have that posted on the site, but other sessions such as the sponsor panel, we may not be. So could you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. And if you see me looking out the window, there's an Amazon delivery, and I'm giving my dog the evil eye from the left corner of the screen here. We're good, I think. We could have an explosion of barking. Okay. So I would say that we are actually in the process of getting a sense of our permissions from those keynotes in terms of recording and distribution. And so we've asked those questions, and we're waiting to hear. The sponsor panel, we cannot record, unfortunately, but we'll have the opening recorded, the closing recorded, and hopefully one or both of the keynotes.
So I want to thank everyone for joining us, especially our panelists, Professor Butler, who presented a lot of information in a very short period of time. We're all looking forward to welcoming students back and to keeping everyone well informed. So thank you for joining us today. Look for more information to come. We will have much of it in this Friday's e-newsletter. We've captured all of the questions that came in through the panel discussion today. There were well over 150 questions, and we did our best to answer them live, but we have documented them all. And so both this Friday and next Friday, look to see those addressed. Many of the questions have common themes. So you'll be able to find that information both in the Bryant Strong Reopening newsletter and the Bryant.edu reopening site, which is a hub. So you've got kind of one-stop shopping for all of that information.
Great.
Thank you very much,
Thank you,
everyone.
everyone.
Thank you for joining us today.